Stop scrolling. Right now. Because what I am about to walk you through is not another celebrity gossip cycle. It is not another influencer death spiral. It is not another 2-minute internet headline that fades by sunset. This is something far darker. A woman is gone. Her fiancé just resurfaced from total silence with a letter so carefully sculpted, so suspiciously polished, that it reads less like grief and more like a legal team's opening statement. And while the public was busy reading every line of that letter, a second bombshell quietly detonated in the background, a federal-style class action lawsuit that drags one of the biggest names in entertainment into the very same orbit as the man at the center of this case. If you thought this story was simply about a tragedy in Tanzania, buckle up, because the rabbit hole goes way deeper than anyone has admitted out loud. The name of the game right now is Joe McCann. The woman the world is mourning is Ashley Janae Robinson. And the truth that is slowly clawing its way to the surface is going to make a lot of powerful people sweat. Stay with me, because by the time we are finished, you will see this entire situation in a completely different light. Before I dive into the deep end of this story, I want to take one breath and speak directly to Ashley's family, to her closest friends, and to every single person who knew her in real life, not as a screen persona, not as a viral clip, not as an Instagram tile, but as a daughter, as a sister, as a cousin, as a partner, as a friend. I attended the wake. I attended the service. I sat in the same rooms where her loved ones were holding each other up. And I left with one feeling above all others. Ashley was loved. Deeply, ferociously, and without condition. The warmth her family showed me, the kindness her friends extended to a stranger with a camera, that is something I will not forget. Several of them pulled me aside and said something I want to repeat out loud, because it matters. They said the way this community in the comment section has handled Ashley's story has been respectful, thoughtful, protective. They said the discussion under these videos has not turned into a circus, has not turned into cruelty, has not turned into the kind of poisonous speculation that usually swallows cases like this one. They are watching, they are reading, and they noticed. So before I unload everything I have gathered in the last 48 hours, I want to say thank you to every person here who has stayed thoughtful, stayed measured, and refused to step on a grieving family's grief just to chase a viral moment. That is the standard. That is the bar. Now let us get into it. The man at the eye of this hurricane has a name, and that name is Joe McCann. Not Joseph, not Mr. McCann. Joe. Because when someone hides behind a polished public image while a young woman lies in a casket, they don't deserve the dignity of a formal title. Joe McCann broke his silence. After weeks of nothing, no statement, no interview, no public appearance, no condolence letter, no flowers, no mention, Joe finally surfaced. And where did he choose to surface? Not at the wake, not at the funeral, not at the family's doorstep. He surfaced on Twitter, a keyboard, a timeline, a scroll. That is where this multimillionaire crypto founder chose to deliver his first words about the woman he allegedly intended to marry. And the letter he posted has now become the single most studied piece of writing in this entire case. Why? Because of what it says. And more importantly, because of everything it carefully refuses to say. Sit tight, because I am going to walk you through this letter line by line, and by the end you are going to understand why a lot of investigators, a lot of crypto insiders, and a lot of Ashley's own friends believe this letter was never written for Ashley at all. It was written for the courtroom of public opinion. And maybe, just maybe, for an actual courtroom that may be coming next. The letter opens with something that sounds almost rehearsed. Joe writes that there are no adequate words to describe the devastation, the emptiness, the shock that he feels after losing his best friend, his confidant, and his fiancée Ashley Janae Robinson. Pause right there. He uses her full government name, the legal version, the name on the birth certificate. Now, before anyone misreads this and calls it disrespectful, let me clear the air. That spelling, Ashley, is the spelling her family uses on her memorial program. It's the version her parents printed. It is the version on the official documents. The other spelling, the LEE spelling, was her stage handle, her brand identity, the version she built online. So Joe is technically correct. But notice the choice. He uses the familicide spelling, the legal side spelling, the documentation spelling, when he is the one person in her life who supposedly knew the personal version. He wants the public to read this and think, see, I knew her real self. I am one of the inner circle. I am familiar. That single naming choice is a calculated frame, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. He then pivots to her parents. He addresses Yolanda. He addresses Harry. He calls Ashley's passing an incomprehensible tragedy. Beautiful sentence. Tragic sentence. But ask yourself this. If a man is so devastated by the loss of his soon-to-be wife, if he is so connected to her parents, if he is so woven into this family that he can publicly address them by their first names like an in-law, then where was he during the wake? Where was he during the service? Where was the phone call? Where was the floral arrangement? Where was the contribution? He has the words for a public letter, but he did not have the words for a private text. He has the digital reach to type out paragraphs for the timeline, but apparently could not muster the nerve to look Yolanda in the eye. That is not grief. That is theatre. That is a press release wrapped in the language of mourning. Then he writes that Ashley was a woman who embodied compassion, empathy, kindness, generosity, and love. He says she was a nurturing presence who cared deeply for the people closest to her. And then he slides in a phrase so smooth, so calculated, that you almost miss it on the first read. He says, quote, which to my eternal gratitude included me. There it is. The pivot, the redirection, the spotlight slipping off Ashley and onto Joe. Eternal gratitude included me. Translation, I was on the inside. I was chosen. I was loved. He then describes how she fattened him up with her cooking. He says she had a great relationship with his children. He says they shared quiet moments of reflection and the joys of being in love. And then he drops something that has not been confirmed in the public record up until this point. He says she decorated their home for every holiday. Their home. Singular. Joint. Shared. He has just told the entire world, on a public timeline, that they were living together. That detail was not previously public. That detail was not previously confirmed by the family. That detail was not previously confirmed by Ashley's friends in any on-the-record capacity. And now, suddenly, in the middle of a grief letter, that detail is dropped into the conversation as if it has always been understood. Why? Because if Joe and Ashley were living together, then the relationship looks normalized. It looks domestic. It looks healthy. It looks like there could be no reason on earth why anything sinister could possibly have happened on that trip in Tanzania. He is laying down narrative bricks. Brick by brick by brick. Watch the wall go up. He continues. He says Ashley wanted, more than anything, to become a mother. He says she would have been an incredible mom. He says they were planning a family. Now this is the most strategic line in the entire letter. Because the moment you tell the public that the woman wanted to be a mother and that the two of you were planning a future together, you erase any possibility in the public imagination of a man hurting that woman. Why would he? She was carrying the future he wanted. Why would he? She was about to give him the family he was building. Why would he? It would be against his own interests. That is the unspoken argument tucked inside that sentence. And it is brilliant. It is dangerous. And it is the exact playbook that high-end crisis communications firms use when their clients are under fire. When the optics get heavy, you humanize the relationship to a degree that makes accusation feel absurd. He is not writing a love letter. He is writing an alibi. He talks about her short film. He talks about her decorating skills. He talks about her hosting. He talks about her encyclopedic knowledge of music, her love of Aerosmith, her interest in techno, her dabbling in DJing, her ability to rap. Beautiful tributes on the surface. But notice the function. Every single one of these details is information already publicly available about Ashley. Every single one is a fact that her parents, her friends, her followers, and the press have already discussed. He is repeating what is already known and dressing it up as intimate knowledge. It is the textbook strategy of someone trying to appear closer to the deceased than the actual record may support. He closes by calling her an angel who shined her light on everyone fortunate enough to be in her presence. He says there is no way to fill the void. He says all we can do is carry her legacy forward. And then he signs off with the line, Ashley, I love you forever. Period. End of letter. And that is where I draw my first hard line. Because no, that is not all we can do. That is not even close to all we can do. We can ask questions. We can demand answers. We can refuse to let this story fade. We can pressure the right authorities, the right outlets, the right networks, until the truth claws its way out of whatever vault it has been buried in. Carrying a legacy is beautiful, but carrying a legacy without justice is just decoration on a tragedy. Now, let us flip the entire script. Forget what the letter said. Let us talk about what the letter did not say. The letter did not mention the trip to Tanzania. The letter did not mention what happened the night Ashley died. The letter did not mention the argument that neighbors reportedly heard going on for days. The letter did not mention the questioning by Tanzanian authorities. The letter did not mention his passport being held. The letter did not mention his villa being only minutes away from where she was. The letter did not mention his return to that villa. The letter did not mention the timeline. The letter did not mention the police. The letter did not mention the investigation. The letter did not mention even one factual detail of the actual incident that took her life. Not one. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you read a grieving fiancé's eulogy that contained zero details about the death itself? You have not, because that is not how grief writes. Grief is messy. Grief stutters. Grief asks why. Grief begs the universe for an explanation. Grief mentions the moment, even if it is only to curse it. This letter was clean. This letter was structured. This letter was edited. This letter was lawyered. And that is how you know it was not really for Ashley. It was for the public. It was for the press. It was for, possibly, a future jury. Let us sit with that silence for one more moment, because it deserves a paragraph of its own. There's a particular kind of silence that says more than any sentence ever could. It is the silence of a man advised on exactly what he can and cannot say. It is the silence of a man whose every public word is filtered through a legal team before it touches the keyboard. It is the silence of a man who knows that anything he writes today could be screen captured, archived, and weaponized against him in a deposition tomorrow. That is the silence in this letter. You can almost hear the lawyer in the background saying, "Do not mention the trip. Do not mention the villa. Do not mention the argument. Do not mention the questioning. Do not mention the timeline. Stay on grief. Stay on her. Stay on the future you were planning together. Stay safe." And he did. He stayed safe. He stayed in the lane that legal counsel paved for him. And in doing so, he revealed the very thing he was trying to conceal, that the man writing this letter was not a free man emotionally, was not a free man professionally, and may not, depending on what unfolds next, be a free man legally for very much longer. The internet has one question burning hotter than any other. Where is Joe McCann right now? Is he in the United States? Is he still in Tanzania? Is he in custody? Is he free? Has the passport been returned? Has he been charged? Has he been cleared? I am going to be straight with you. I do have sources. I have spoken to people on the ground. I have had conversations that, frankly, would shake some of you if I repeated them word for word. But I am not going to broadcast every single detail tonight, and I want you to understand why. The family is grieving. The family is working behind the scenes. There are conversations happening that, if I splash them on this timeline tonight, could compromise the very thing all of us are trying to push toward: accountability. So instead of spilling the bucket, I am going to do what I have always done. I am going to point at the floor and let you read between the lines. Joe tweeted a letter. Big deal. A tweet does not prove physical location. A tweet does not prove freedom. A tweet does not prove anything except that someone, somewhere with access to a password, hit the post button. I could give you the password to my account right now, and you could post in my voice tomorrow morning. That is the truth of digital communication in 2026. The Tanzanian authorities, last anyone publicly confirmed, were holding his travel documents. If those documents had been returned, if he were back on American soil, if he had been spotted in any major hub, that information would have leaked. This man is one of the most watched figures in the world right now. You think a sighting would stay quiet? Not a chance. So when people in the comments tell me they are sure he is free because he tweeted, I have to gently correct that. A tweet is a keyboard. A keyboard is not a country. And let me give you a small piece of context that not many channels are going to give you, because not many channels actually have it. We have eyes on the ground. We have ears in rooms that the rest of the press does not even know exist. We are aware that the Tanzanian authorities have, at various stages, brought in close to 10 different individuals for questioning in connection with this case. We are aware of multiple women who have been linked to Joe McCann in that region. We are aware of a network of acquaintances, drivers, locals, and staff who are watching every move and reporting back through channels that I will not name on a public broadcast. The picture being painted from those whispers is not the picture being painted in glossy magazine articles. The picture from the ground is messier. The picture from the ground is darker. The picture from the ground includes details that, when the time is right, are going to make a lot of people sit up straight in their chairs. Until then, all I can do is tell you to trust the people who are paying attention, and to dismiss the people who are pretending to know things they do not know. There's a lot of noise out there right now. A lot of so-called insiders. A lot of pretenders. Be careful what you consume. Verify everything. Trust patterns, not personalities. Now, I want to pull your attention to something that dropped quietly back in April, but is suddenly trending again, because the timing is no accident. A major business publication published a long, detailed feature on Joe McCann's career, his rise, his collapse, and the storm that has been brewing under the surface of his public persona for years. Let me give you the highlights, because you need this context to understand the full picture. Joe founded a financial firm focused on digital assets back in 2002. He raised significant capital from heavyweight names in the crypto world. At his peak, his fund nearly doubled in value. He was profiled. He was praised. He was paraded as one of the smart guys in the room. Then, mid-2025 happened. The fund hemorrhaged. Reports indicate losses of up to 80% of its value. He attempted to pivot his investors into a new vehicle. That pivot reportedly failed. He started seeing Ashley Janae in November of 2024. He brought her into his orbit. They went on luxury trips. They posted soft life content. They projected wealth, harmony, romance. The image was perfect. The image was calculated. The image was a curtain. Behind that curtain, the fund was bleeding. Behind that curtain, investors were getting nervous. Behind that curtain, the man who had been parading a couple of the year aesthetic was watching his entire empire wobble. That is the backdrop you need to keep in mind when you ask yourself the only question that matters in this case. What could possibly have happened the night Ashley died? There is one detail in that article that I have to underline in red ink for you, because it is the single most damning piece of context in the entire write-up. The article describes Joe McCann's operation as what is known in the financial world as a key man fund. That phrase may sound clinical, but its meaning is everything. A key man fund is a fund where one single individual is so central to its operations, so essential to its strategy, so irreplaceable to its identity, that if that one individual disappears, defaults, dies, or is disgraced, the entire fund collapses. There is no co-founder safety net. There is no successor in waiting. There is no second in command, quietly running things on the side. It is one person with one name, holding one pillar that the entire structure rests on. When you understand that, you understand the desperation. Because the moment Joe McCann becomes publicly damaged, the moment his name is associated in any concrete way with a death investigation, the moment investors start pulling capital, the moment partners start distancing, the fund does not just struggle. It implodes. There is no fallback. There is no recovery plan. There is only the collapse. That is why this letter was written the way it was written. That is why the timing was what it was. That is why the language was so carefully scrubbed of any incident detail. Because every word in that letter was a brick laid down to delay the implosion of a structure that, behind the scenes, may already be in freefall. Here is where I have to put my cards on the table. And I want to be very clear with my language, because this is speculation. I am not stating fact. I am offering you a theory based on the pattern of evidence that has surfaced. Since day one of covering this case, I have been chewing on the same question that every viewer is chewing on. What was the argument about? What could possibly have triggered a man to leave his villa, drive back, and end up at the center of a death investigation? People keep saying it was about cheating. People keep saying he caught her texting someone. People keep saying she caught him texting someone. I do not buy it. And here is why. Ashley Janae was an industry woman. She was photographed alongside major artists. She moved in circles where flirtation, attention, and DMs were a daily occurrence. The idea that a 40-something crypto founder, who himself reportedly had multiple women in multiple cities, would lose his composure over a flirtatious message in a phone. It does not track. It is not proportionate. It is not the trigger. So what is the trigger? Money, reputation, exposure. Picture this scenario, and again, this is a theory. A couple, days deep into an argument that neighbors reportedly heard from the next villa over. Tempers shredded, tension screaming. One of them digs through the other's phone. Maybe she finds messages from another woman. Maybe he finds messages from another man. The romantic component lights the match. But the bomb? The bomb is something else. Imagine, in the middle of that fight, the woman shouts something along the lines of, "I know what you did with that money. I know you did not actually lose what you said you lost. I will tell every single one of those investors. I will burn the whole thing down." That, right there, is the line that turns a fight into a financial threat. That is the line that pulls the conversation out of jealousy and into survival. Because in the crypto world, in the venture world, in the high-stakes money world, exposure is not embarrassment. Exposure is extinction. Exposure is lawsuits. Exposure is criminal charges. Exposure is decades of consequences. And the men who play in that world do not respond to exposure with calm. They respond with everything they have. I am not saying that is what happened. I am saying that is the only theory that makes the timeline make sense. A woman knew too much. A man had too much to lose. And somewhere between those two facts, a tragedy occurred. I want to dwell on one detail from this case that has been quietly haunting me since the day I first heard it, because it deserves more weight than it has been given. The reports from that villa complex indicate that the arguing did not last for 1 hour. It did not last for one evening. It lasted for days, multiple days, loud enough, sustained enough, intense enough that someone in an adjacent property remembered it well enough to report it. Now think about what that means. Couples argue. That is a fact of human relationships. But couples on a vacation, in a luxury villa, in a foreign country, in what was supposed to be one of the most romantic phases of their lives, do not argue for days unless something fundamental has fractured. Something deep. Something existential. Something that touches the bone of the relationship rather than the surface of it. A surface argument lasts an hour. A deep argument lasts a day. An existential argument, the kind where one person knows something about the other that could destroy their entire future, that is the argument that lasts for days. That fits the pattern. That fits the timeline. That fits the outcome. I am not handing you a verdict. I am handing you a piece of the puzzle and asking you to hold it up to the light and decide for yourself what it looks like. Now let me drop the second bombshell, because if you thought the Joe story was contained to Tanzania, you have not been paying attention. The artist Iggy Azalea, yes, that Iggy Azalea, real name Amethyst Amelia Kelly, has just been hit with a class action lawsuit from investors over memecoin tied to her name. The coin reportedly lost nearly all of its value since launch. Investors are alleging the project was built on misleading promises. The lawsuit was filed on May 5th. Now hold that date in your head. May 5th. Because do you know what else happened on May 5th? Joe McCann posted his letter. Same day. Same hour window. Same news cycle. Coincidence is a beautiful word. But in stories like this, coincidence is rarely just coincidence. Why does this matter? Because Iggy herself, just a couple of weeks ago, posted on her own Instagram story that she had previously worked with Joe McCann, that she had previously been associated with him, but that she and others had since distanced themselves from him. Public statement, public distance, public separation. But here's what whispers from inside that orbit are now suggesting. Sources are indicating that the public distancing was a presentation, not a reality. Sources are suggesting that the working relationship between the two of them never actually fully ended. Sources are suggesting that Joe may have had direct involvement with the very memecoin that is now at the center of a lawsuit. Now connect the dots. Joe is under investigation in Tanzania. Joe is facing reputational annihilation. Joe is potentially looped into an investor lawsuit on the crypto side. And on the exact same day that the lawsuit drops, Joe pushes out a humanizing, sympathy-tilted, image rehab letter to the public. That is not coincidence. That is choreography. I want you to internalize this same-day pattern, because it is one of the cleanest tells in this entire saga. Crisis communications professionals have a name for this maneuver. They call it counter-programming. The idea is simple. When negative news is about to drop on you, you flood the same news cycle with a piece of positive or sympathetic content of your own, so that the audience and the algorithm have to choose between two competing narratives, and the human brain, naturally, tends to anchor on the emotional one. A grief letter from a fiancé about a woman the world is mourning is exactly the kind of emotional anchor that pushes a financial lawsuit headline to the second slot in everyone's feed. It is a deliberate move. It is a textbook move. And the fact that we can see it happening in real time, in front of our own eyes, on the exact same calendar date, is one of the strongest indicators we have that this letter was, at minimum, partially weaponized? Was it also genuine? Maybe. Was it also lawyered, timed, and positioned for maximum coverage of the wrong story? Almost certainly. I want every single person watching to understand something, because this part is going to feel uncomfortable, and it should. The trouble Joe McCann is facing on the crypto side may end up being deeper than the trouble he is facing on the Tanzania side. And I know that sounds backwards. I know that sounds wrong. I know it sounds like I am minimizing what happened to Ashley, and I am not. Stay with me. The reason I say it is because of the nature of the worlds involved. Tanzania, sadly, has a documented history of cases involving foreign nationals where evidence vanishes, investigations stall, and outcomes are influenced by money and connections. African viewers in my own community have shared their experiences with me about this exact pattern. Many cases of harm against women in that region quietly disappear into bureaucratic fog. They never see a courtroom. They never see a verdict. So, as much as I hate to say it out loud, the Tanzanian side of this case is the side where Joe has the highest probability of slipping through. Money buys silence. Connections by distance. Time buys forgetting. But the crypto world is not Tanzania. The crypto world is a global, decentralized, paranoid, vengeful, lawyer-rich, investigator-rich, receipt-rich ecosystem. The crypto world does not forgive financial betrayal. The crypto world does not forget a wallet trail. The crypto world has investors who will fund private investigations, hire forensic accountants, leak documents, file lawsuits in multiple jurisdictions, and make sure the person who burned them never sleeps comfortably again. Joe may walk out of Tanzania. He is not walking out of crypto. Not without scars. Not without exposure. Not without consequences he cannot buy his way out of. Now let us pull this back to Ashley, because she is, and always will be, the heart of this story. Think about the relationship for a moment. Joe and Ashley were not casual. They were engaged. They lived together, by his own admission in that letter. She, by his own description, was close to his children. She decorated his home. She entertained his guests. She prepared his meals. She traveled the world with him. There is an Instagram post that surfaced recently where Ashley showed a screen filled with code, the kind of green cascade aesthetic you see in tech thriller films, and she joked that her man could hack into a cable network from halfway across the globe just to make sure she could watch a sports game. People laughed. People scrolled past. But that single post tells you something massive. It tells you that Joe was deep in tech. It tells you that Joe had skills the average crypto founder does not have. It tells you that Ashley had a window into the technical side of who he really was. And in a relationship that intimate, in a household that connected, you do not stay in the dark forever. You learn things. You overhear things. You see things on screens. You read texts left open on counters. You catch fragments of phone calls. You absorb. You absorb. You absorb. By the time of that final trip, Ashley was not a girlfriend who knew nothing. Ashley was a partner who knew enough. And in this kind of world, knowing enough is the most dangerous thing a person can be. I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about the family, because this part deserves to be said out loud. Some viewers have criticized Ashley's parents. Some viewers have asked why they have not flown to Tanzania. Some viewers have asked why the service was scheduled the way it was. Some viewers have demanded more public commentary, more interviews, more outrage from them. I understand the impulse. I do. But I want to push back, because after attending the wake and the funeral, I can tell you with certainty, this family is not silent. This family is strategic. This family is faithful. This family is doing things their way, on their timeline, for reasons that are theirs. The card I was handed at the service, the program I held in my hands, the words written on the back of that card, every single piece of it told me that these are deeply spiritual people who believe in handling their pain with grace and dignity. They are not built for spectacle. They are not built for cable news. They are not built for screaming on a live stream. And that does not make them weaker. That makes them theirs. They are the parents. They lost the daughter. The world owes them the right to grieve in any shape they choose. And by the way, contrary to what some outlets have already speculated, Ashley was not buried on Tuesday. There was a wake. There was a service. There was a repast. But the burial, the final goodbye, has not happened in the manner some have assumed. I will not say more than that, because that is for the family to share when they are ready. And when they are ready, you will hear it from them first, not from me. That is the line I am holding. That is the standard I am keeping. I do want to take a quick moment to address something cycling in the news space. A major celebrity news outlet has reportedly been publishing details about Joe, including statements that have framed certain events in a particular light. I will not throw that outlet under the bus, because I have professional relationships in that space and I respect a lot of the people who work there. But I will say this on the record. That outlet was denied access to the wake. That outlet was denied access to the service. Multiple media organizations were turned away at the door. Whatever they have been publishing about events inside those rooms did not come from inside those rooms. It came from somewhere else. Read that carefully. Sit with it. Information has a source. When the source is not where the event happened, you have to question the entire narrative being constructed. So let us land the plane. Let us bring this all the way home. Joe McCann, a man with a fund in shambles. Joe McCann, a man with a passport that was reportedly held. Joe McCann, a man under active investigation in connection with the death of his fiancée. Joe McCann, a man who, on the very same day a major lawsuit was filed against an artist he was reportedly tied to, decided that the best use of his time was to publish a polished, lawyered, image-rehabilitating eulogy to a woman whose family he never personally consoled. That is the pattern. That is the picture. That is the man. And the question I keep coming back to, the question I want every single one of you to chew on tonight, is this: what is more terrifying, the Tanzania side of this story, or the crypto side? Because depending on how the next few weeks unfold, we may discover that what happened in that villa was not the beginning of Joe McCann's nightmare. It was simply the moment the rest of the world finally caught a glimpse of a nightmare he had been outrunning for years. I want to be transparent with you for a final moment. I have additional information. I have additional sources. I have specifics that I am intentionally not putting into this video tonight. I am not doing that to tease you. I am not doing that to bait the algorithm. I am doing that because the family has a process, the investigation has a process, and journalism, real journalism, has a process. There is a version of this story I could publish tonight that would absolutely break the internet for 48 hours. There is also a version of this story I could publish tonight that would compromise the very justice I am trying to help apply pressure toward. I have made my choice. I am choosing the latter. I am choosing patience. I am choosing the family. I am choosing Ashley. And when the time is right, when the family signals that they are ready, when the investigation reaches the point where details no longer endanger outcomes, you will hear those details here first. That is the promise. That is the plan. That is Ashley Janae Robinson was 20-something years old. She had built a brand. She had built a fan base. She had built relationships across the music industry, across the influencer space, across the entertainment world. She had ambition. She had warmth. She had the kind of laugh that, by the testimony of every person I have spoken to, lit up entire rooms. She called herself an island gal in honor of her Trinidadian roots. And she carried that culture with the kind of pride that you cannot manufacture and you cannot fake. She wanted to be a mother. She wanted to be a wife. She wanted to expand her career into film, into music, into spaces she had not yet conquered. And in the middle of building that future, in the middle of chasing that life, in the middle of saying yes to a proposal on what was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, her story was cut short under circumstances that, as of tonight, still do not fully make sense to anyone outside of the people who were there. That, right there, is why this case matters. Not because it is trending, not because it is dramatic, not because it makes good content, but because a real human being with a real family with real dreams deserves real answers. And the only way she gets those answers is if the pressure stays on. The light stays on. The questions stay loud. And before I close this out, one more thing. Everything I have laid before you tonight that lives outside of confirmed reporting is theory. It is pattern reading. It is the connecting of dots that individually are public, but collectively paint a portrait that no single outlet has yet been willing to fully describe. Joe McCann has not been charged with any crime in connection with Ashley's death. He has not been convicted of anything in connection with the lawsuit involving Iggy Azalea. He has not been formally implicated in the financial allegations swirling around his fund. Until those things change in a courtroom, those remain allegations, theories, and questions. Hold both truths at once. Stay outraged to the pattern, but stay precise with the language. That is how real pressure works. That is how real change happens. So here is what I am asking you to do. If you have made it this far, and I know you have, because the people who actually care are the ones who stay until the end, do the small things that make the big difference. Drop a comment below. Tell me your theory. Tell me what you noticed in the letter that I might have missed. Tell me how you read Joe's silence on the actual incident. Tell me what you think about the lawsuit timing. Tell me what you think about the bigger crypto picture. Every comment is fuel. Every comment is a signal. Every comment is one more reason for the algorithm to push this story in front of one more pair of eyes that might know something, that might say something, that might shake something loose. Hit the like button if you got even one piece of value out of this breakdown. Subscribe if you have not yet, because we're going to keep covering this story until there is something that resembles an actual answer. Tap the notification bell so you do not miss the next update, because more is coming. A lot more is coming. Share this video with one person who has been following this case, because 2 pairs of eyes are stronger than 1, and 10,000 pairs of eyes are stronger than 10. We are not letting this fade. We are not letting this go quiet. We are not letting the news cycle bury Ashley Janae the way her loved ones have not yet been able to bury her body. We are staying loud. We are staying sharp.